Small and inconspicuous, insects are often reduced to their most basic functions, like eating and producing offspring for the preservation of their species. But in fact, they are highly intelligent, each with a distinct character and personality.
The individuality of leaf beetles was something I really didn't expect.
Their pin-sized brain is a powerhouse.
Bees have a great sense of time.
We now know that some spiders can both plan ahead and think logically.
They need to be good at face recognition. They need to be good at understanding relationships. And in those particular areas, wasps are geniuses.
They live among us, observing us, even when we don't notice them. And when we're away, the insects come out to feast. Anything sweet or sugary, they just can't get enough. To us, their behavior might seem pre-programmed. Many don't think insects are capable of intelligent behavior. But more scientists are becoming convinced otherwise. Over the past few years, insect researchers have completely changed our preconceptions about these small creatures. In London, Lars Chitka is researching the behavior of bumblebees and bees. He's considered one of the pioneers of insect behavioral research.
We
can't measure the intelligence quotient of insects with the same tests as we do with humans. But we can, of course, present them with challenges that test their flexibility. For example, by looking into whether they can count or solve various tasks that are used as intelligence tests for primates and corvids.
Lars Chitka uses bumblebees for one of his most important intelligence tests. They live in his institute at Queen Mary University. Many skills, such as caring for offspring, are innate. But would bumblebees also be able to solve a completely new task, which a crow could master? Sugar water is added to artificial flowers for an experiment. Then 6 bumblebees are let into the box. Gradually, they each realize that there is a reward to be had here. In step 2, an obstacle in the form of a plexiglass plate blocks access to the reward. The bumblebees can still see it, but no longer reach it. Initially, they ignore the thread.
Es ist halt bei diesem Versuch so, dass
the thing about this experiment is that the animal isn't just moving towards a food source. It has to learn a new movement to get to the food, in this case pulling on a thread. Solving this problem to obtain a reward is something that a bee or bumblebee has never had to do in its evolutionary history.
So, will they figure out how to pull on the thread? Bumblebee number 81 gives it a try. After just 3 minutes, she gets it, and the others follow suit. The conclusion: just like clever crows, tiny insects know how to use a tool to get a reward.
Very impressive. We knew that people would be surprised.
Although he still has many critics, Chitka's research has revolutionized the way we look at bumblebees and other insects. There are around 1 million insect species on Earth. They are invertebrates, and for the most part, they have 6 legs and a 3-part body. One species that was domesticated by humans around 7,000 years ago is the honeybee. A bee colony is also known as a superorganism. Its synergy makes very complex behavior possible. As a community, they can achieve more than as individuals. Together, bees can, for instance, regulate the hive's temperature by fluttering their wings. But keeping it at a constant 35 degrees is only possible with a sophisticated plan. To achieve this, select bees must position themselves in strategic places. Every bee has a clear task. The queen has a less glorious job than her title suggests. She lays pencil-shaped eggs and inspects the brood combs. She can live up to 5 years and will usually only mate once during her lifetime. Drone bees hatch from fertilized eggs, and worker bees hatch from unfertilized. A queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. 21 days after she lays the eggs, a worker bee hatches. It struggles to free itself from the brood comb. But as soon as it does, it will have to get to work. The workers set the tone in the bee colony. In summer, 30 to 50,000 of them live together in the hive. After hatching, they take care of hygiene, air conditioning, and feeding the larvae. Later, they guard the entrance against intruders. After 2 to 3 weeks, they turn into field bees and provide the community with nectar and pollen. The males, or drones, have huge eyes. In summer, 2,000 to 6,000 drones live in the hive. Their whole existence revolves only around one thing. During what's known as the nuptial flight, they fly out with newly hatched young queens and mate with them. Bee colonies are strictly organized, as they have been for the last 100 million years. The bees have an innate sense of how to construct the honeycomb. Each octagonal cell has exactly the same dimensions. There's no need for engineers or construction plans. They simply know how to do it. Still, anyone who studies honeybees intensively will ask themselves if they really do everything instinctively. Tomasz Radacki has kept bees for 40 years and, through the Aurelia Foundation, advocates for a more natural approach. This means allowing bees to build their own honeycombs instead of using man-made ones. His wife, Daniela, shares his passion.
It's all fresh nectar. Look. Linden.
Bees can fly up to 5 kilometers to collect the pollen, which sticks to their bodies. A single bee can pollinate up to 1,000 flowers a day. They bring the nectar back to the hive, where it's stored and turned into honey within a few weeks. The field bees are the life insurance of the bee colony. If they couldn't find their way back, all the bees would starve. That's why they have to be master navigators.
When the bees have finished their first stage of life with their hive tasks, they have to get to know the landscape. Up until that point, they've only been inside the dark hive. So when the young bees fly for the first time, they fly out, turn around immediately, and practically fly backwards, always looking at the hive while moving away, flying up and down.
This is how they get to know the coordinates of the hive. They find their way with an innate navigation system.
Bees have a great sense of time and follow the path of the sun even when it's cloudy.
Their solar compass helps them keep their bearings so they can always find home. But can it also work if they're moved to an unknown area in complete darkness? An experiment. 5 field bees are chosen at random, marked with yellow dots. They're placed in a dark box so they can't use the sun for guidance. They are taken 3 kilometers across the countryside by bike. The market square is a foreign environment with hardly any flowers to attract the bees. Will the bees find their way home?
Hi, Thomas. I released them 5 seconds ago.
We've started. It's possible that we've chosen bees that still haven't learned enough about the landscape. This you can't tell just by looking at them.
There, she's making 2 circles like the other one, as if she's getting her bearings.
Theoretically, of course, a bird could also have eaten them.
Bees fly fast, over 20 kilometers an hour, and it's just 1 kilometer flying distance from the marketplace to the hive.
There. Cool.
All 5 bees find their way home.
None of them made it in under 2 minutes. The slowest time was 8 minutes 40 seconds.
This experiment dates back to the 19th century, when behavioral biologist Jean-Henri Fabre invented it. But we've only just recently understood how they do it. Like us humans, bees have a virtual map stored in their brains. They can store landmarks such as streams, houses, flowering meadows, paths, and their position in relation to the hive. In flight, they can navigate home perfectly from a new location within their habitat. It's an amazing achievement for a brain just the size of a tiny grain of rice. Still, that brain has 1 million neural connections. In comparison, there are 86 billion nerve cells in the human brain. They process and store images, shapes, language, and experiences, among other things. A close relative, the bumblebee, has a similarly tiny brain. But their intelligence isn't just about the number of neurons. Many insects have a ladder-like ventral nervous cord distributed over their entire body. The different segments, or ganglia, are used to process sensory information and control motor activities. In the head, several ganglia fuse together to form the brain. Neuron stimulation begins in the antennae, which are also receptors of smell, taste, hearing, and touch. 60,000 tiny pores on the antennae absorb scent. From these olfactory receptors, the stimuli go to the first olfactory center, the antennal lobe, where the initial processing takes place. Passing along two nerve cords, consisting of many individual nerve cells, the stimuli reach what's called the mushroom body. Presumably, this is where the central learning and memory center is located. Shapes, colors, smells, landscapes. The bee processes all of this at lightning speed. They only have a few hundred neurons to perform this task. This tiny brain works very efficiently, despite its size. When it comes to their behavior or appearance, most people see little difference between individual insects. But couldn't this wasp, for example, be braver than her sisters? She knows exactly how to cleverly free herself from this dangerous honey trap. At the University of Bielefeld in Germany, biologist Caroline Müller studies the personality traits of insects. She's chosen a particular kind of beetle for her research, the mustard beetle. It's a tiny creature. At first glance, one beetle is like the next, no different in shape, pattern, or color, and its behavior also appears the same. The insects have the same mother, but only some have the same father. Apparently, the only thing on their mind is eating and reproducing. The first experiment looks at how willing the beetles are to take risks, testing their escape instincts. Caroline Müller starts by marking each one.
We take our beetles and drop them here. It's meant to simulate something like a bird dropping a beetle it's caught, allowing the beetle to run away. So the experiment is testing the animal's flight reaction.
For many, the initial reaction is the same. They quickly flee from the center of the petri dish to the edge, seeking protection. But then there's a beetle that behaves differently. He takes his sweet time, having a look around, before leisurely walking to the edge.
What I find most interesting in this test is that you can clearly see that some individuals placed inside the petri dish are quick to scoot to the edge in the first week. 3 weeks later, when I retest that same insect, it's again very quick to run to the edge. Others that are slower initially will again be slower in the second test. This consistency and the individuality of leaf beetles was something I really didn't expect.
The next experiment evaluates the beetle's activity. Each beetle moves around in a petri dish for 30 minutes. The movement patterns are captured by an evaluation software. Red and yellow indicate a long stay in the same place. Blue, a shorter one, and white, none at all.
As we can see. I mean, the variation is really huge. If you look at this beetle, that showed then a very different behavior, so it stayed mostly outside, right?
Yes, it stayed mostly outside on the edges, but it was also exploring in the middle. In contrast to, let's say, this one, which was on the edge the entire time, but was not also exploring much.
Genes and environmental factors shape the personalities of beetles, just as in humans. But why are these differences so important? Diversity in a population is a big advantage when it comes to adapting to threats and environmental changes. At the University of Tours in France, insect researchers are uncovering new discoveries, along with puzzling new mysteries. One that is confounding biologist Joël Meunier and his team has to do with how earwigs care for their young. Earwigs look after their eggs in a similar way to birds. The female protects the eggs and always stays close by. After 2 months, when the larvae hatch, the female earwig keeps protecting them against predators, a rather unusual behavior in the insect world.
On a celle-ci, par exemple, où ce qu'on peut voir, c'est que la mère va transporter les petits.
Here you can see the mother transporting her offspring to a new place with her mouth parts, just as mother cats do when they are stressed.
De chats font.
They take the kittens and move them to another place.
But couldn't the larva survive without the mother? Why all this effort? The researchers discovered that the mother also benefits from the extensive time with her offspring. They help rid her of parasites. So, is this behavior innate? To find out, Meunier tries separating a mother from her newly hatched earwig babies. Later, these earwigs have offspring of their own. How will they now look after their babies? A few weeks later, the astonishing results are in.
We show that if a baby did not receive care, then when this baby become a new mother, the mother, as a mother, they would provide less care as well. So it might be a form of learning. There is no reason to believe that there is no learning capabilities or that their brain structure does not allow them to learn. The only limit is that we don't know, and this is something that we have to work on.
Researchers are now investigating the entire life cycle of the solitary insects. If even earwigs can learn, could there be other insects that have developed more complex thinking skills? The small American town of Ann Arbor is a unique place for insect researchers. At the University of Michigan, a special research area has been dedicated to a particular species of wasp and its intelligent behavior. It's the paper wasp. It builds its nests from wood fibers, which it mixes with its own saliva to form a solid paste. When it dries, it turns into a very hard building material. The special thing about paper wasps is that each one has a different face. No two have the same color and texture. Elizabeth Tibbetts has been researching paper wasps for over 20 years. Compared to bees, paper wasps are less organized. Their colonies resemble more of a loosely organized roommate arrangement than a superstructured beehive. This could have something to do with the fact that their faces are so different and that they can recognize each other. This would suggest there's a separate area in the brain for visual recognition and memory. Previously, the only insects known to have this capacity were bees.
So you can see some wasps have yellow eyebrows, some wasps don't. Some have little black spots in the middle of their face and other wasps don't. And these are all the same species, they're all living together in a group, and you might wonder why.
Studies have shown that paper wasps can actually distinguish between the faces of their own kind.
The reason that wasps have individual face recognition is because individuality is so important for wasps. Each wasp has a different role in the colony. Sometimes they're nice, sometimes they're mean, sometimes they have cooperation, sometimes they attack each other. So knowing who's who is very important for wasps.
Paper wasps are active during the day. If a foreign wasp approaches the nest, they see that it's an unfamiliar face. The stranger is then threatened or attacked, and battle lines are quickly drawn. In the botanical garden of the Research Institute, biologist Emily Laub studies insects in their natural environment. Several nests serve as study objects. Emily Laub and Elizabeth Tibbetts have discovered that individual paper wasps have distinct personalities. Several females lay their eggs in the same nest, while bees reserve the nest for only one queen. So no wonder that the social life of wasps is more complex than bees.
Some wasps are more affiliative than other wasps. They're more inclined to engage in social contact than other wasps. And some wasps are more aggressive. They're more inclined to engage in aggressive behaviors with each other, more fighting with wasps they don't know. We also find that wasps differ in how active they are. How much time do they spend moving around? What is their propensity to explore new areas?
It's the end of July. The paper wasps are caring for their offspring, with a little extra help from the scientists. It's now peaceful in the nest after a turbulent spring when several females fought to become queen.
So these are a bunch of potential queens, and they're checking out all the other queens. These two guys are fighting. You can see they're hitting each other with their antennae and their front legs. The other wasps are just standing there watching. They want to see who wins this fight. So you can see they kind of get close. She's looking at them and wondering who's going to win this fight. They're learning about each other, and then their previous experience with those individuals influences their future contest behavior.
The researchers want to learn more. Can paper wasps abstract? That is, not only remember events, but also analyze them and draw conclusions. Could a paper wasp solve a mental exercise too complex for the brain of a human toddler?
First up, I'm gonna look at them. They are dragon, cow, and dinosaur. So if I tell you that dragon is a better fighter than the cow, and the cow is a better fighter than the dinosaur, then even if you never saw the dragon and the dinosaur interact, you'd be able to make a guess. You'd be able to say, yes, the dragon is probably better than the dinosaur. So that's a very basic kind of transitive inference. Using what you know, dragon is better than cow, cow is better than dinosaur, to make an inference or a guess about a relationship that you don't know.
Until recently, this ability to logically reason was attributed exclusively to humans. We now know that monkeys, birds, and fish can also reason. Transitive inference is the ability to deduce unknown relationships from known ones. Researchers are now carrying out the experiment with paper wasps, but instead of stuffed animals, they use colors. To begin with, they have to remember 5 different colors. In the next step, the insects have to put them in a logical order. The wasps have to choose between two colors in 4 separate rounds. One causes small electric shocks, the other does not. But, with the exception of yellow and light blue, all other colors can either cause an electric shock or not, depending on their pairing. In the first color pair, the wasp prefers yellow. It learned in the first round that blue is associated with an electric shock. It properly completed the task. Through many repetitions, they learn blue is more painful than yellow, purple is more painful than blue, green more painful than purple, and light blue more painful than green. They prefer the colors without electric shock. The colors are linked to pain, following a logical principle, just like the experiment with stuffed animals. This allows the wasp to form a ranking. Will that allow the wasp to correctly evaluate a color pair for which it has never been trained? Which color does it prefer, blue or green? It decides, logically, in favor of blue. How valuable is the ability to logically deduce the unknown for the everyday life of a paper wasp?
So wasp life is organized so that everyone that they interact with is in a linear hierarchy from most dominant to least dominant. And so if they have transitive inference, they can guess how strong other wasps are without actually needing to fight. They can say, oh, I beat Susie in a fight last week, and today Susie beat Jane, so my guess is I'm gonna probably beat Jane. And that helps them live their life and manage conflict without fighting with everyone they meet.
The researchers observe the wasps' fights closely. This is a commonly observed scenario. An opponent giving up before the fight has even started. This wasp has probably concluded that she doesn't stand a chance. It's not known whether any other insect species shows similarly impressive logical skills. Their relatives, the honeybees, were unable to solve this problem.
I don't think that wasps are like overall geniuses. You know, they're never gonna paint a picture or write a book, but there are a few things that a wasp really needs to be good at to succeed. They need to be good at face recognition. They need to be good at understanding relationships. And in those particular areas, wasps are geniuses.
If insects are intelligent, do they also have sensations and feelings, like primates? How does a bumblebee experience pain, for example? Through a reflex? Or does it perceive the pain before deciding how to react? Carl von Frisch, who discovered the communicative waggle dance of bees at the beginning of the 20th century, doubted that insects could feel pain at all. He carried out the following experiment. A bee was given sugar water. While it was drinking, Carl von Frisch would cut its body in half. He observed that the bee showed no pain reflex, but continued to drink for a few seconds before it died. For him, this was proof that insects lack pain receptors.
That's, of course, nonsense. Because anyone who has ever seen someone thread a grasshopper onto a fishhook or something similar will know that the insect is obviously not thrilled by that experience and fights back to the best of its ability. Of course, the same is true if you pester a bee by rolling it between two fingers. Then you'll very quickly realize that it naturally has an appropriate reaction to this.
Recent studies have shown that many insect species have pain receptors, meaning they react reflexively to a stimulus. So they can, like humans, also tolerate pain. Philosopher Jonathan Birch studies the sentience of animals. His research group discovered that octopi, lobsters, and crab are very likely to cognitively perceive pain. These are invertebrates, like insects. In many kitchens, lobsters are thrown alive into boiling water and can survive for up to 3 minutes.
In that time, there's this storm of nervous system activity just as there would be with a human or any other animal dropped into boiling water. So it is not a quick method, it's not a humane method.
Jonathan Birch's findings have led to the welfare of these animals being taken into account in future animal welfare legislation in the UK. The London-based research team is now investigating whether insects also feel pain, which could afford them the same protection by law, both in the UK and the European Union. The issue is suddenly very current, not least since insects are becoming an increasingly important food source for humans. In St. Leonard, Austria, Andreas Koitz breeds mealworms. His operation on 65 square meters yields 500 kilos of insects per month. But what does animal welfare look like in the case of insect breeding? And how can insects be killed as humanely as possible? For some time now, the EU has allowed the processing of mealworms and other insects into food. Andreas Koitz only gives his mealworms high-quality feed.
So, in a box like this, there are around 10,000 animals, and they're actually only fed with byproducts from the food industry like wheat bran, brewer's yeast, fruits, and vegetables. Here we have potatoes deemed unfit for the store, but perfect for us.
After 3 to 4 months, the larvae are old enough for further processing. They're then sorted according to size. It's not hard to keep mealworms in a species-appropriate way, since they thrive together in a mass. But can even mealworms, which are classified as insect larvae, cognitively perceive pain and feel emotion?
In production, I have to say that I never consciously noticed any pain or anything else. And even the sorting process, which involves a lot of sifting and so on, I don't notice that they eat less or anything like that. They just continue to behave as normal.
Though he has thought about how to kill the animals as humanely as possible, he's opted for a gentle method that corresponds to the worm's natural life cycle in winter. The worms are frozen at minus 20 degrees Celsius. At some point, the metabolism stops working and they simply die. In stark contrast, industrial agriculture has little regard for the life of insects. Insecticides kill billions of insects, not only insects that damage plants, but also beneficial ones. These bees have been poisoned with pesticides. Their death lasts for minutes. Whether the bees feel more than just a pain reflex has not yet been scientifically established. A research group at Queen Mary University in London is currently investigating this, with an elaborate experiment designed by behavioral biologist Lars Chitka. The biologist and his team set up a box with several feeding stations. The yellow ones contain a 10% sugar solution, the pink a 40% sugar solution, even more attractive to the bumblebees. But there is a downside. The surface underneath that solution is heated up to 55 degrees.
The question is whether the bees, when encountering an unpleasant heat stimulus, simply flee from it reflexively, or whether they can learn to suppress their reflex if they get a particularly good reward.
It's obvious that mammals feel pain. Their nervous system is similar to that of humans. Too little is known about the insect nervous system. Such experiments can provide some clues. A bee notices there is something sweet at the yellow feeding station. Another has no idea that the sugar water in the pink container is even sweeter. Although the heat stresses the bumblebees, more and more fly to that one. The study from 2022 shows that bumblebees accept the pain in exchange for the sweet reward.
Also diese schlaue Hummel hat das begriffen, dass es an den
So this clever bumblebee understood that there was better food at the pink feeding place, and that she had to bear the pain by suppressing her normal reflex to flee. She got the treat from what is actually a painful platform. This means that the natural behavior of pulling back from this painful stimulus can be suppressed.
zurückzuziehen unterdrückt werden kann.
The experiment is further evidence that insects may be sentient beings, and that they adapt their reaction to stimuli according to their present situation. Lars Chitka works closely with philosopher Jonathan Birch, who brings a very different perspective.
I think the term sentience has come to be quite an important one for animal welfare, animal law, because it's intended to capture all the feelings an animal might have. It's this capacity to have feelings, which could be feelings of pain or pleasure, but also comfort, discomfort, joy, excitement. And it's very useful to have this concept because we don't just want to be talking about pain all the time.
These statements sound provocative to many who conduct research on insects. He raises the question of whether insects have their own self or a consciousness.
We've got several big larvae, we've got a couple peptiles, what makes you you? You know, what is that subjective inner world? I don't know if a wasp has it. I don't know how you'd even draw a gradient of it.
But it's true, it has interesting philosophical implications in thinking about what animals are capable of and what they can think and how we treat them.
Wasps may lack in like the cute factor for a lot of people, but they're capable of these really complicated and sophisticated cognitive things. I think it draws a lot of questions.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in their mind, that's for sure.
We now understand how clever and sensitive insects are. At the same time, human activity is threatening many insect species with extinction, regardless of their intelligence and cognitive capacity.